evening, everybody. I'm just going to start in a couple of minutes, so go ahead, keep drinking, enjoy your refreshments, and we'll get going soon. All right, everybody, thank you so much for coming out tonight. We're really glad to see you, glad that you're here. Can't wait to hear what you want to see at the future green spaces that we're going to be putting in here. I'm going to start with a land acknowledgement here for Laidlaw Church. So Laidlaw Church in the city of Hamilton is situated upon the traditional territories of the Erie, Neutral, Huron-Wendat, Haudenosaunee, and Mississaugas. This land is covered by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, which was an agreement between the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe to share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. We further acknowledge that this land is covered by the Between the Lakes Purchase, 1792, between the Crown and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. Today, our city and our church is home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island, which is North America. We recognize that we must do more to learn about the rich history of this land so that we can better understand our roles as residents, neighbors, partners, and caretakers. Welcome everybody. This is the Living Cities Community Planning Workshop. This is the first one we're having. Later this year, we're going to be doing our first DPAVE event on Ottawa Street. It's going to be here at the church. It's going to be on June 22nd. Hopefully, if a rain date happens, we'll be here on June 29th. But what this workshop is for is to plan what we're going to be doing that day. So I'm Sarah Green. I'm the Living Cities Project Coordinator at Green Venture. My manager, who's not here tonight, is Liz Enriquez. And then our Executive Director is Juliana Casimiri. So what is Living Cities? It is a program funded by Green Communities Canada with the idea of putting green infrastructure all over the country. With the green infrastructure, we want it to be three things. We want it to be equitable, so we want it to be for everybody. It's accessible. It's present all over the city. That ties into the abundancy. We don't want to have pockets of green here and there. We want everybody to live within a close range of green spaces. And finally, we want it to be thriving. We don't want to just plant it and forget it. We want to plant it and maintain it. We want to see it thrive, and we want to have those benefits that come in as these green spaces mature. So, what is green infrastructure? There's a lot of different definitions of it, but kind of a good general one is this one that I have up here. So it's the use of natural systems and different design elements that are made to manage water, provide different habitat for biodiversity, so birds and bugs and bees and butterflies and different mammals, as well as improve air quality and create healthier urban environments for people as well. So if you take a look at this picture, this is just an alleyway, and if you look on the left-hand side, you kind of see what's known as the traditional gray infrastructure or hard surface infrastructure. What that does is it doesn't allow water to permeate it. So you see all the flood damage kind of in the middle section down here at the bottom where it's cracked. If you look at the right-hand side, this is after green infrastructure has been put into place. So you can see permeable pavement lining the center and the outside edges. This is going to let that water pass through instead of pooling and causing issues. You can also see all the green spaces on the side. It makes it prettier to look at. It's more nice to walk down. and it's creating that habitat that I talked about for the birds and bees and different wildlife. So when we're talking about green infrastructure, there's a lot of different benefits that come with it. So in addition to the habitat creation and stormwater control, you can also see homeowner savings, because when you have an increase of a tree canopy, you're going to see cooler temperatures throughout the city. You're not going to have as extreme urban heat island effects, which is something that's really common in Hamilton with all the great infrastructure that we have in the city. You're going to see cooler temperatures. You're going to see healthier residents, both mentally and physically. You're also going to see more jobs created to take care of the green spaces. Educational programming is available when it's more abundant. And it becomes just commonplace to see it in policy, which allows it to be in certain places all over the city. So we're talking about Hamilton. I mentioned the urban heat island effect. And what that is all this great infrastructure, the concrete, the pavement, the asphalt, it's absorbing all the sun. It's absorbing that sunlight and it's making it a lot hotter. So when you look at Hamilton from an aerial view, downtown you can kind of see the industrial areas, and then moving back toward the escarpment where that big green ribbon is. In between all those little areas, all the neighborhoods, you can see how there's very low tree canopy cover throughout the city. Yes, there's tree canopy in the escarpment and kind of in little pockets. You can see the big one here at Gage Park, but overall Hamilton is really lacking. And like I said, this affects both mental and physical benefits for the residents in Hamilton. So if we zoom in a little bit further, and we're looking right where we are right now, so the intersection of Cannon and Ottawa, just right out here, is circled in this bullseye area. So you can kind of see south of us is where Gage Park is, and you start to see a little bit more tree cover. But that's why we want to focus essentially in Ward 3 and Ward 4, is taking advantage of essentially the lack of green infrastructure now and coming in and putting it in and hopefully making a big difference for stormwater and for resident health. So Green Venture has done this a few different places around the city. This past year we really focused on Barton Street East, so just kind of north of here. You can kind of see on the left-hand side, this is Barton and Sherman. So what it was before was an extra wide boulevard. You can see weeds were growing through it. The concrete wasn't in the best shape. And then on the right-hand side, that concrete has been pulled up, the soil was remediated, and you can see all the native plants that we've put in that were later planted that day. We also had a local artist come in and put in the beautiful mural above it to serve as educational program and also to draw people's eyes as they're driving down the street. As I've said, we've done this a few places. This is just at the Barton Street Library. Again, before it was just a barren patch of soil with a few trees in it. They came to us and wanted to partner and make it an enhanced green space. So similar to what we'd like to do here with some of the lawn space, we want to come in, we want to put in some permeable pavement, like you can kind of see in the middle of the right-hand picture, as well as some native plants to really liven the space up and make it more aesthetically pleasing, but also bring in those benefits that we talked about. So here we are today at Laidlaw United Church. So as you know, we're at the corner of Ottawa and Cannon. We've gone around with our designer, we've also talked with the Reverend, and we've come up with a few rough ideas about where we would like to do this work at. So we're going to be pulling up a total of 250 square feet of pavement, as well as over 150 square feet of concrete. So that's going to be a combination of the parking lot back here, as well as some of the walkways that, as well as some of the walkways that go along the church. They're in poor condition, so we'd like to pull them up, put in maybe permeable pavement, or just make something better, make the church a little bit greener, instead of just having the lawn space and the broken pavement in the back. So we have the 3 zones. After I get through with this presentation, we'll all take a short walk, a little field trip, and we'll actually go around the property and we'll talk about each side a little bit more. But out here right now is going to be the north yard. That'll be our site 1, and that's going to be right bordering Cannon Street. So there's going to be the bus stop there, as well as the bike rack. Coming around the back of the church, around the alleyway, we're going to come up to site 3, which will be the back parking lot. There's currently a shed there. It's a little hard to tell in this aerial picture due to some trucks that are parked, but that shed will actually be moved, and we're going to pull that pavement up underneath it and put in a garden there, or some sort of green space. It kind of depends on what y'all would like to see. And then finally, our last site is going to be our site 2, is what we're calling the south yard, and that's going to be just over here on the side of the church, right up against the church leading up to the accessibility ramp. So we have a few different ideas. These are from all over the world that I found some examples, but this is kind of a bigger goal. So this is known as green streets, and that's when cities have signed on to this policy about putting green infrastructure everywhere, and they make it a priority to make the whole streets green. So it's a combination of trees, as you can see it. It isn't just grass in the medians. There's native plants, There's bio-retention ponds, like stormwater ponds and bioswales. It's a whole combination that some cities have taken on to make their whole city greener. So it's just things, dreaming like that is what I'd like to see, starting with this. So as I mentioned, those bio-retention ponds, and what those are made to do, rain garden is specifically made when it rains a lot and we had those big storm events. It's designed to hold all that extra water instead of it spilling out and flooding, your basement or the parking lot or the sidewalks when you're walking around. So green infrastructure, it's not just about plants, it's about people interacting and experiencing it as well. There's a lot of different neat seating ideas that we can use and incorporate. Maybe it's a picnic bench, maybe it's something like this where it's actually built into the planters, and so you're setting right with the butterflies and birds buzzing overhead. There's a lot of neat ideas, just something to consider about what you'd like to see when we're walking around. This is permeable pavement, and so I think a lot of people might be familiar with kind of the brick patios that do allow water to pass through them. This is a new company in Canada called Storm Flow Surfacing, and they have these custom colors that are available, so they can do all sorts of designs. So maybe we're outside and you think, oh man, what kids would like a hopscotch patio, but it could all be permeable pavement. So just things like that kind of think outside the box in different ways that we can incorporate this. Maybe it's, hockey lines or something if it was in an alley to incorporate kids to play. That way we're still incorporating green infrastructure, but allowing people to interact with it and use it on their day-to-day basis. So this is a mini forest. Mini forests are something that Green Venture also does and have done in a few places around the community. This is a smaller version of what we have done, and so we thought about maybe using something like this perhaps in the back parking lot. It's a very small forest, and the idea is to plant all sorts of different trees and native species very densely, and that creates competition, which allows the strongest ones to grow, and it creates a more mature forest at a quicker pace than you would see out in the traditional park. So yeah, those take a little bit more space than a single tree, but you get a lot more benefits by having so many plants planted so densely. So before we go outside, and like I said, we'll start with the site one over here in the north and make our way around. Just think about some questions. So when you're out there, maybe close your eyes. What do you feel in the space currently? Do you notice that it's really loud with traffic? Or do you notice that it's really windy, like this is a really bad wind tunnel area? Maybe you notice oh, I really like the grass, but I really wish I had somewhere to sit and read under this tree. Just things like that. Think about what is there currently and then what you would like to see or how you'd like to use the space differently. If you like to do different activities, maybe it's throwing a frisbee, well then we shouldn't use the whole area to make a garden. We should leave some green space for people to have recreation and maybe play with their dog as well. So it's considering all the different ways that you would like to use it and then how others would like to use these spaces too. Something to consider is when we are planting, we're not just thinking about spring and summertime when there's blossoms and a lot of color. We want to keep in mind, spring and in the dead of winter, what can we do to make it still visually interesting? Maybe that's using shrubs that, stay colorful throughout the winter. Or maybe it's different permeable pavement that provide color on the ground when people are walking through. Pardon me. Just different things to consider when we're walking around. And lastly would be what kind of wildlife. So if you're really a big fan of butterflies, well then we should plant that certain type of shrub or flower to draw them in. Just things like that you can consider when you walk around. And then when we come back in, we're actually going to be going downstairs, and there's going to be small tables set up, and it's going to be 5 people per table. And then we'll start doing some small group work and actually talking and hearing all what you'd like to say. Is there any questions right now? Excellent. Well, then we can grab our coats and then head outside and we'll go to the north lawn.